two cities. Same desert, same shrinking river. One of them will make it, the other one won't. And the difference isn't luck, it isn't rainfall, and it isn't some secret aquifer buried under the sand. The difference is math. Cold, brutal, unforgiving math that most people in one of these cities refuse to look at directly. Right now, roughly 4.9 million people live in the Phoenix metro area. Another 2.3 million live around Las Vegas. Both cities sprawl across some of the driest land in North America. Both drink from the same overdrawn artery, the Colorado River. Both watch their lifeline reservoirs collapse to record lows in 2022. From the outside, they look like twins, two neon mirages that grew where no city should grow. But look closer, because here's what almost nobody outside the water world understands. Las Vegas spent the last 2 decades building an escape hatch. Phoenix spent the same decades building subdivisions. One planned for the worst, the other bet on the best. And the desert does not reward optimism. So the real question isn't whether the Colorado River is dying. It is. The question is which of these two cities survives what comes next, and why one of them is walking straight into a wall it can already see. Let me show you the numbers. Because once you see them, you can't unsee them. Start with the water source, because everything flows from this. The Colorado River was divided up in 1922 by an agreement called the Colorado River Compact. 7 states carved up the flow: Arizona, California, Nevada, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and New Mexico. Sounds tidy. It wasn't. The men who signed that deal measured the river during some of the wettest years the region had seen in centuries. They assumed the river carried around 17.5 million acre-feet of water a year. The actual long-term average is closer to 12 or 13 million. In some recent years, far less. They promised out water that didn't exist. And the entire American Southwest has been living inside that lie ever since. Now here's where Las Vegas and Phoenix start to split apart. Nevada, the state Las Vegas sits in, got the smallest slice of that 1922 pie. Just 300,000 acre-feet a year, a rounding error compared to the giants. Arizona got 2.8 million acre-feet. California got 4.4 million. On paper, Nevada looks like the loser. The kid picked last, that tiny allocation is the single most important reason Las Vegas is going to survive. Because when your legal share of the river is that small, you learn to squeeze every drop. You have no choice. Scarcity forced Las Vegas to become the most efficient water city in America. Meanwhile, Arizona sat on a mountain of paper water and acted like the mountain would never shrink. Watch how differently these two cities behave. Las Vegas recycles nearly all of its indoor water. Every drop that goes down a shower drain, a sink, a toilet inside the Las Vegas Valley gets treated and sent back into Lake Mead. And when it flows back into that reservoir, the city earns what's called a return flow credit. In plain terms, the water gets counted back. Las Vegas can use it twice. Indoor water in Las Vegas is essentially free of charge against their allocation, because it comes home. Roughly 99% of indoor water gets reclaimed. No other major American city runs that system at that scale. Now Phoenix. Phoenix does recycle water, and it deserves credit for that. But Phoenix does not sit on the edge of the reservoir it drinks from. Its geography doesn't hand it the same closed loop. Its return flow accounting doesn't work the same magic. And critically, Phoenix's water culture never faced the same knife at its throat. When you have 2.8 million acre-feet on paper, you don't panic. You build. And build they did. Between 2010 and 2023, Maricopa County, home to Phoenix, was one of the fastest growing counties in the entire United States. Thousands of new homes went up every year across the desert floor. Subdivisions bloomed in places that were empty scrubland a decade earlier. Buckeye, Goodyear, Queen Creek, Surprise, entire cities inflating like they'd never run dry. Every one of those rooftops needs water. Every lawn, every pool, every golf course, every new family turning on a tap for the first time. Phoenix kept selling a future it could not fully water. Here is the moment the math cracked open in public. In June 2023, Arizona's own state government released a groundwater study for the Phoenix area. The finding was blunt. There was not enough groundwater to support all the future development already approved on paper, the state announced. It would stop approving new subdivisions in parts of the Phoenix area that relied entirely on groundwater. Not a warning, not a projection, a stop. Think about what that means. In one of the hottest growth markets in America, the state effectively said, no more. We cannot promise you water for these homes. That is a government admitting out loud that the desert has a ceiling and the city just hit it. Las Vegas has never had to say that sentence. Not once. Let's go deeper on the groundwater, because this is a hidden fault line most people never see. Phoenix does not survive on the Colorado River alone. It leans heavily on two other sources, the Salt and Verde River system, and a massive reserve of underground water. Groundwater is the savings account, and Phoenix has been dipping into that account for a very long time. The problem with groundwater is that it doesn't refill on any human timescale. Some of the water beneath Arizona is thousands of years old. Rain that fell before the pyramids. When you pump it out, it's gone. And when you pump too much, the ground itself sinks. There's a phenomenon in central Arizona called land subsidence. In some areas, the surface has dropped. Cracks called earth fissures open up across the desert, some of them long enough to swallow a car. That is the land physically collapsing because the water that held it up has been sucked away. Las Vegas leans on Lake Mead, one lake, one river, almost entirely. Simple, exposed, but honest. Phoenix leans on a river, a second river system, and a shrinking underground reserve that gives the illusion of depth. It has more sources. It also has more ways to fail quietly. Now, the Central Arizona Project. This is the vein that keeps Phoenix alive, and it's the vein that will bleed first. The Central Arizona Project, or CAP, is a 336-mile canal that lifts Colorado River water out of Lake Havasu and carries it uphill across the desert all the way to Phoenix and Tucson. It's an engineering marvel. It also came with a catch that almost nobody outside Arizona remembers. When Arizona fought to get that canal funded by the federal government back in the 1960s, California made them accept a brutal condition. Arizona's CAP water would be lowest priority. Junior rights. Junior rights. Hold on to those two words. Because they decide who dies first. When the Colorado River runs short, cuts don't fall evenly. They fall on the junior rights holders first. And Arizona's CAP supply, the very water that grew Phoenix into a metropolis, sits near the bottom of the pecking order. California, with its senior rights, gets protected long after Arizona starts bleeding. So when the federal government declared the first ever official Colorado River shortage in August 2021, guess who absorbed the biggest cuts? Arizona. In 2022, and again in 2023, Arizona lost hundreds of thousands of acre-feet of its river supply. Farmers in Pinal County, south of Phoenix, watched their CAP water get slashed by roughly 65% in 1 year. Fields went fallow. Wells got drilled deeper, which just accelerated the groundwater collapse. Now compare that to Nevada. Nevada takes cuts too under the same shortage rules. But Nevada's total allocation is so small, and its recycling so efficient, that a cut of 25,000 or 30,000 acre-feet barely scratches the city. Las Vegas can absorb the blow because it built its entire existence around expecting the blow. You see the pattern forming? Every mechanism that punishes the Colorado River's users punishes Phoenix harder. Junior rights, bigger allocation to lose, heavier reliance on the exact water most exposed to cuts. Phoenix isn't unlucky. Phoenix is structurally first in line for the guillotine. And Las Vegas. Las Vegas spent $1.4 billion making sure it could reach water even after Lake Mead crashed. That's the third intake. The one crew's nicknamed the third straw, Las Vegas, drilled a tunnel 3 miles long through solid volcanic rock beneath the floor of Lake Mead itself to pull water from an elevation of 860 feet, lower than Deadpool, lower than both of the city's older intake pipes, lower than any municipal water intake ever built in the United States. It took 7 years and finished in 2015, 7 years before the crisis actually peaked. Phoenix has no equivalent. There is no secret tunnel under Lake Havasu waiting to save Phoenix when the canal runs dry. When CAP water stops flowing, the canal doesn't have a deeper straw to drop. It just stops. The physics are different. The geography is different. The preparation is different. Let me paint the temperature, because heat is the multiplier that makes all of this worse for Phoenix specifically. In the summer of 2023, Phoenix endured 31 consecutive days at or above 110 degrees Fahrenheit. 31 days. The asphalt got hot enough to send people to burn units for falling on it. Overnight lows in some neighborhoods didn't drop below 95. Air conditioning became the only thing standing between millions of people and death. And air conditioning, the swamp coolers, the cooling towers, the misters on every patio, all of it drinks water. The hotter it gets, the more water a desert city consumes just to stay livable. Evaporation off reservoirs speeds up. Lawns die faster. Trees demand more. Phoenix is bigger, hotter, and more sprawling than Las Vegas, which means its cooling burden is heavier and its water bill under extreme heat climbs faster. The climate isn't hitting these cities equally. It's leaning harder on the one already carrying more weight. Now, the grass. This one tells you everything about the difference in mindset. Nevada passed a law banning what it calls non-functional turf, the decorative grass along street medians, around office parks, in front of strip malls, grass that nobody walks on and exists only to look green. Ripped out. Illegal to water it with Colorado River supply. That single program is projected to save roughly 6 billion gallons of water a year. Las Vegas went to war against its own lawns, and won. Phoenix has grass rules and rebates too, and cities like Scottsdale and Tempe have pushed conservation. But Arizona never swung the hammer the way Nevada did. There's no statewide ban on ornamental turf across the Phoenix metro. There are still golf courses, hundreds of them, glowing green in a desert that is running out of the one thing that makes green possible. Golf is a massive industry in Arizona. It's also enormously thirsty. Try telling a state with that much money tied up in fairways to let them go brown. That's the trap Phoenix built for itself. It grew an economy that depends on water it can no longer guarantee. Real estate that assumes endless expansion. Agriculture that assumes cheap river water. Recreation that assumes emerald grass in July. Every one of those assumptions is a debt coming due. Las Vegas has an economy that depends on tourists, not lawns. And tourists, believe it or not, use less water than you'd think. The Strip, all those fountains and pools and casinos, accounts for a surprisingly small slice of the region's water. The famous Bellagio fountains run on well water, not the drinking supply, and the water recirculates. The city's real water hogs were always the same as everywhere else: outdoor residential landscaping. And Las Vegas attacked exactly that. So one city built its wealth on something water-light, and then slashed the water it did use. The other built its wealth on sprawl and thirst, and now can't easily unbuild it. Let me be fair here, because this isn't a story about Phoenix being stupid. It isn't. Phoenix is home to brilliant water managers who have known about these problems for decades. Arizona built underground water banks, storing surplus river water in aquifers during wet years for use during dry ones. That was smart. Genuinely forward-thinking. The Arizona Water Banking Authority has parked millions of acre-feet underground. But a savings account only lasts so long when you keep withdrawing and stop depositing. The wet years that filled those banks are getting rarer. The withdrawals are getting bigger, and the growth machine never slowed down to match the water reality. Good planning at the state agency level got overwhelmed by relentless development at the city and county level. The engineers saw the cliff. The builders kept driving. Here's a number that should stop you cold. Between 2023, the Colorado River Basin endured one of the driest 24-year stretches in more than 1,200 years. Scientists reconstructed that timeline using tree rings, reading drought in the width of ancient wood. This wasn't a bad decade. It was a megadrought, the kind that used to unfold over centuries, compressed and amplified by a warming climate. And the research suggests these long dry periods aren't anomalies. They're a recurring feature of this land. The 20th century, the wet century that Phoenix and Las Vegas both grew up during, may have been the exception, not the rule. Which means both cities were built on the wettest stretch the region is likely to see for a long time. Both were founded on a fluke of good weather. The difference is what each did once the fluke ended. Now let me answer the question I know you're asking. If Las Vegas is so smart, why isn't it safe forever? It isn't, and I won't pretend otherwise. The third straw reaches water at 860 feet. But there's a harder floor called Full Dead Pool, around 895 feet, the elevation at which no water can physically move past Hoover Dam under any conditions. Wait, that math looks backwards. And it matters. The third straw pulls from 860 feet, deep enough to keep drawing, even after Hoover Dam can no longer generate power or release water downstream. So Las Vegas can still sip from a nearly dead lake. But if Lake Mead ever truly bottoms out, if the water simply isn't there in any usable volume, no tunnel on Earth can pull water that doesn't exist. Engineering buys access. It cannot manufacture rain. So Las Vegas isn't immortal. Las Vegas is prepared. There's a difference, and that difference is everything. Think of it like two people in a sinking lifeboat. Both are going to have a very bad time. But one grabbed a bucket early and has been bailing for 20 years, learning exactly how much water the boat can take. The other spent those 20 years adding passengers. When the storm hits, the baler has a fighting chance. The other one is doing arithmetic they don't want to finish. Let's talk about that finish. What does Phoenix actually face? Not a Mad Max wasteland tomorrow. That's not how this works, and anyone selling you instant apocalypse is lying. The collapse of a desert city isn't a wall of dust. It's slower, quieter, more bureaucratic, and in some ways more brutal because it's invisible until it isn't. It looks like this. A subdivision gets approved, then frozen because the state can't certify a 100-year water supply. Home values in the outer rings start to wobble. Insurance and financing get harder in areas flagged as water insecure. Farms in Pinal County, already gutted by cap cuts, sell their land, and much of that farmland gets bought up for, of all things, more housing, which needs more water, which nobody can promise. Wells drop. Some rural residents outside the city who rely entirely on private groundwater watch their taps sputter and run dry, forced to haul water in by truck. That is already happening in parts of Arizona right now. Meanwhile, the core of Phoenix, the wealthy established center, will do fine for a long time. The pain lands first on the edges, on the newest developments, on the poorest residents, on the farms with junior rights and no political muscle. Collapse in a modern city isn't uniform. It's sorted by money and by who arrived last. And Las Vegas? Las Vegas will keep the water flowing to its taps. It'll keep cutting per capita use, which has already fallen more than 40% since 2002, even as the population grew by hundreds of thousands. It'll keep fighting over every acre-foot at the negotiating table. It secured its access when the water was still there to secure. That decision, made in 2008 when construction on the third straw began, was the single smartest bet either desert city made this century. Now, the 2026 deadline, this is the fault line running under everything, the original 1922, compact rules for sharing shortages expire in 2026. The 7 basin states have to negotiate a new set of guidelines for how they divide a river that keeps shrinking. And these negotiations have been ugly. The lower basin states, Arizona, California, Nevada, sit on one side. The upper basin states, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, sit on the other. Nobody wants to volunteer their water. Everybody points upstream or downstream and says, cut them, not us. Watch where the leverage sits. California, with those senior rights, holds the strongest legal position and the least to lose. Arizona holds the junior rights and the most to lose. Nevada holds the smallest allocation, which paradoxically makes it flexible. It can give a little, because it doesn't need much. In a fight over a dwindling river, Phoenix is the one player with a weak hand and a full house of dependents. That's a terrible seat at the table. If the negotiations fail, the fight goes to the courts, and litigation over the Colorado River can drag on for years while the reservoirs keep dropping. That uncertainty alone is a threat. Investors, developers, and cities need to know what water they'll have in 2035. Right now, Phoenix genuinely doesn't. Let me hand you one more contrast, because it's the cleanest illustration of the whole story, in 2023, when a freak year of record Rocky Mountain snowpack dumped a surprise surplus into the system. Lake Mead rose more than 20 feet in a single year. Both cities exhaled. But listen to how differently they treated that gift. The scientists warned everyone, one wet year does not undo 20 dry ones. Las Vegas, already living in survival mode, treated the good year as a reprieve, not a rescue. It kept ripping out grass. It kept capping usage. It kept its foot on the conservation pedal. The wet year didn't change Las Vegas's behavior, because Las Vegas had already accepted the brutal math. A city that has made peace with scarcity doesn't celebrate a rainy season. It banks it and keeps bailing. Phoenix needs those wet years to keep coming. That's the whole difference. One city built a system that survives the dry years. The other built a system that requires the wet ones. And the climate models, revised again and again toward hotter and drier, say the wet ones are exactly what's disappearing. So here's the honest scorecard. Not the feel-good version. The real one. Las Vegas has a tiny allocation it can defend. Near total indoor recycling, a war on ornamental grass, a 40% cut in per capita use, senior positioning relative to nobody but the discipline of a city that never had the luxury of waste, and a $1.4 billion tunnel reaching water deeper than any drought on record. It also has a compact, contained geography clustered around a single lake it can physically reach into. Phoenix has a huge allocation it's losing chunks of, junior cap rights that get cut first, a collapsing groundwater savings account, sprawling growth built on assumptions the desert can't honor, brutal heat that multiplies its water demand, a golf and lawn economy it can't easily shrink, and a state government that already had to stop approving new homes in parts of the metro because the water isn't there. Same desert, same river, two completely different fates, not because one city is virtuous and the other is villainous, because one prepared for the worst decades before the worst arrived, and the other kept betting the desert would forgive it. The desert does not forgive. I want to leave you with the thing that haunts me most about all of this. It isn't the reservoirs. It isn't the tunnels or the canals or the compacts. It's the psychology, Las Vegas. Survived because Nevada was handed a small allocation and treated it as a hard limit. Phoenix is in trouble because Arizona was handed a large allocation and treated it as a promise. The size of what you're given shapes how you treat it. Scarcity taught one city to respect the water. Abundance taught the other to spend it. And now the abundance is gone. The Colorado River doesn't care which city grew faster, which had better casinos, which had prettier lawns. It carries what it carries. Around 12 million acre-feet in a good year, less and less as the century warms. Two cities reached into that same shrinking artery, and only one of them checked how deep the well went before it built a metropolis on top of it. Phoenix can still change course. It's not too late for policy, for cuts, for hard choices about growth and grass and groundwater, but every year of delay narrows the exit. Every new subdivision deepens the debt. Every hot summer speeds the clock. Las Vegas already answered its hardest question back when the lake was still high and nobody was watching. Phoenix is only now being forced to ask it. And out there in the desert, under a sun that cracks pavement and empties reservoirs a little more each year, the water keeps flowing to one city's taps while a warning quietly spreads under the other. The math was always there, written in tree rings, in canal contracts, in the fine print of a 1922 agreement that promised a river more than it could ever give. One city read the